Get underway here. I'd like our members to take their seats, please.
Oh, good.
All right, let's get started. I would please ask Representative Kenny to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All righty. Let me get ourselves settled here. Okay. Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Environment and Agriculture. We're going to get started with a hearing this morning for SB 329. I'm going to open this hearing. I don't think you heard that. All right. SB 329 relative to background checks of certain persons associated with solid waste management. And with us this morning is the esteemed Senator Howard Pearl, who is the prime sponsor of this legislation. Good morning, Senator Pearl.
Good morning,
It's good to
Chairwoman
see you.
Barron.
Welcome back to Environment and Agriculture in the House.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Always great to come back to my old committee. Very much enjoy it. Always look forward. You'll see me, I think, 3 times today before we're done. So I'll try not to be too boring or repetitive. For the record, my name is Senator Howard Pearl. I am here to introduce Senate Bill 329, which is relative to the background checks of certain persons associated with solid waste management. I brought this bill forward on the request of the DES. They had some technical changes to a bill that we passed last year relating to background checks, and they were able to identify a little bit of cleanup that needed to happen, and so that's what this bill essentially does. I'm actually going to let the director explain really the technical aspects of it, because he will do a better job than I will, but that's primarily all it does. It's a nice, easy bill, and I hope you will all be able to see your way to pass it.
Okay, then any questions for Senator Pearl?
I heard a good line this morning on a bill that was introduced.
Oh.
One of your House members came over and said he'd do his best to sidestep any questions that were brought forward. So I just thought that was a great line. I am stealing it.
Okay, well, consider it sidestepped. I guess Representative Bixby.
So I remember passing this last year.
Yes.
And it seemed like it was pretty simple and obvious. So why are we seeing it again?
Well, this is just some technical fixes that the department identified that they needed after we passed some cleanup language. Again, I'll let Director Wimsatt speak more in detail to that.
Okay, thanks.
You bet.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming
right.
to introduce this bill, and I believe the next one is yours as well.
It is, so I'll hang around. Thank you.
Okay.
Great to see you again.
Thank you. And so now we have this SB 329. Okay, this is for the next bill. We have Director Wimsatt from NHDES. Good morning, Director Wimsatt. And if I may take this time, please, we offer our condolences for the loss of your father.
Thank you.
You're
I
welcome.
appreciate that very much. So, again, for the record, my name is Mike Wimsatt. I serve as Director of the Waste Management Division for New Hampshire DES. And as Senator Pearl indicated, this is really a technical fix because very candidly, we made a mistake last year. Essentially, this bill is purposed to correct a drafting error that occurred in Senate Bill 211 in the last session. And that error was in RSA 149M, the Solid Waste Management Act. So Senate Bill 211 was brought forth last year, and Representative Bixby is absolutely right. It was pretty straightforward. And it really was, its purpose was to adjust language in both our Hazardous Waste Management Act and the Solid Waste Management Act relative to conducting criminal background investigations for applicants or for permits or for permit transfers for both hazardous waste facilities and solid waste facilities. So there were essentially 4 areas of the law that needed to be amended, and we got it right for 3 of them, but we didn't get it right in one of them. And the reason that that happened, the original bill was correct, but we'd made some amendments to the bill on other matters that were appropriate and not particularly controversial. But in so doing, a drafting error occurred that candidly I just didn't pick up when we proofed what came from OLS. So as a result, we didn't realize till after the bill was passed that while we got the language right for hazardous waste permits and permit transfers and solid waste permit transfers, we did not get the language right for solid waste permit applications. And essentially what the law requires is that the agency requests a performance history be submitted and applications for criminal background checks from directors and officers of the company, as well as folks who are, like facility managers that would exercise significant control over facility operations. And when the bill came back, and finally the final version of the bill that got approved, reversed some of that language in a way that meant that as it reads now, we could only conduct a background investigation on directors and officers and not those additional parties. And of course, that's very important because for any either solid or hazardous waste facility, you want to make sure the people who really have control over what's happening there are upstanding citizens that don't have a criminal background. So in essence, what this bill will do is to correct that language so that all 4 sections of the statutes read identically and that we can properly conduct criminal background investigations on applicants for solid waste facilities. And I'm happy to take any questions.
So there were 4 places in the law where this had to be changed and we only really, we messed up one part.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Representative Bixby.
So if I read correctly the bill and how it was changing things, basically the language that was supposed to be on something like line 6 got put on line 3 instead.
That's
And
right.
it's just moving the language to the right place in the paragraph.
Well stated.
Okay.
Yes.
Would you have any objection if we were to exec this today?
None whatsoever.
Okay, thanks.
Representative Germana.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Director, for taking my question. So I guess I'm a little confused looking at the language. Perhaps I'm getting this wrong, so please correct me if I am, that it looks like effectively it's changing the background check from a shall to a may by striking the long dependent clause, which begins at the end of line 5, and placing it in the passage which begins at line 9. It's changing it from the application information shall include to upon the request of the department. So it's not a shall, that becomes a may at the discretion of the department.
Well, no.
Is that not correct?
It is not quite correct. So there's essentially 2 things going on there.
Whenever requested by the department. Sorry, I'm sorry, Director.
No, not at all. In line 4, the sentence that starts on line 4, it's essentially saying that the applicant needs to include a performance history of the applicant and its officers and directors relative to the overall operations, financial security and ownership of all the facilities that they own. So that's a separate and apart. That's what has to be included in the application. When you go down to line 9, the whenever requested by the department is language that's been in the statute for decades. That's not being changed in any way. It's always been written such that theoretically the department could elect not to request that background investigation. In practice, that's not what we do. When we get an application for a standard solid waste facility permit, we do request that application. But that discretion, if you will, is not in play. It wasn't in play in Senate Bill 211, and it wasn't in play in this bill. That's always been written that way. What this is doing is ensuring that when we do request a background investigation, we can lawfully do so not just for officers and directors, but also for partners, individuals, or entities having managerial, supervisor, supervisory or substantial decision-making authority and responsibility for management and operations of the facility. So without that, as it currently reads, and as it was incorrectly amended last year, we could only ask for such an investigation on officers and directors, which is not adequate in our view, and it's not consistent with the way the statute has read for many years.
Okay, thank you very much. That I just was a little confused, but you cleared it up for me, so I appreciate that.
Representative Knapp. I'm sorry. Okay. Representative Murray?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks for taking my question. I did want to just clarify if we are considering potentially executing it today, that there is no fiscal impact, because it appears that nothing would change. Either the fiscal note has fallen off or there's nothing that has changed that would impact that process.
Right. I mean, I suppose, the fiscal impact is really the applicant is required to pay a fee. The New Hampshire State Police conducts these background investigations, and the applicant's required to pay a fee associated with that New Hampshire State Police administer. It's not administered under this statute. But basically, the whole reason the bill came about last year was that it was brought to our attention that the language that had long been in our statute really didn't comport with what the federal FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigations, wants to see when they're going to make access to their national crime database. So this is really just making sure that our state language meets the very specific requirements that they have so that we can lawfully and appropriately request these national background investigations.
Representative Howard?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just further clarification. So it sounds like the first part talks about who's in the application, and the second part is sort of at the will of the department. Is that correct?
I think that's a fair statement. Sure.
Okay. Representative Haskins?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for taking my question. At what time in the process would you say these background checks are instigated?
Sure, great question. Once we are confident that we have a complete application, so that it's an application that we are in a position to review and act on, we would request that. It typically that information, and for privacy purposes, the information is actually submitted directly to the Department of Justice, not to the agency. So we're not managing, they fill out a very specific and somewhat probing form about their finances and their history and such. We don't receive that. That goes directly to the Department of Justice. We just simply send a memo and say, please conduct an appropriate background, performance history and background investigation on the following parties. And then the Department of Justice conducts that investigation.
Thank you.
Follow up, yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Would you say that this change and perhaps the previous bill makes the process more protective for the state as we review these very important applications and permits?
It does, in the sense that if we didn't make the change, there was going to be discomfort on the part of the Department of Justice that they could conduct these background investigations. So
I see.
we wouldn't be able to conduct them, and I think it does provide a level of protection. I will say that in my tenure as director, we have denied one hazardous waste facility permit application because one of the applicants for that permit had a criminal background that we thought made them ineligible and disqualified them from operating the facility.
Thank you very much.
Representative Murray?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just to clarify, so when these application background checks go to the DOJ, if there is an issue, the DOJ then notifies you?
Yes, they submit a report to us on the results of their investigation.
Okay. Any other questions from the committee? Seeing none, I want to thank you, Director Wimsatt, for your testimony on this bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yeah. Anything else the committee has here? Yeah, then I would like to close the hearing for SB 329. There. And Representative Bixby, are you inclined to exec this bill at this time?
I would be inclined to exec this at this time.
Okay.
I'm hoping that someone else would be willing to write the report.
I'll make it.
All right, well, I'm going to open an exec section for SB 329, and I would entertain a motion. Representative Creighton.
Yes, Madam Chair, I recommend, I move ought to pass on SB 320.
Your mic, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move ought to pass on SB 329.
Do I hear a second? Representative Bixby.
I'll second that.
Would you like to speak to your motion, Representative Creighton?
Yes, ma'am. Based on the testimony we just heard, I see no reason not to ought to pass.
Okay. Any other comment, question?
What he said.
What he said. All right, wonderful. Then I would direct the clerk to call the roll on this auto pass motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is an OTP on SB 329. Representative Creighton.
Aye.
Representative Comtois. Yes. Representative Davis. Yes. Representative Kenny.
Yes.
Representative Smart. Representative Bixby. Yes. Representative Dutsey.
Yes.
Representative Murray.
Yes.
Representative Germana.
Oh, I
Yeah,
think
is it
somebody's
doing the
got
same?
theirs on that shouldn't. They're all green?
Mine's red.
Turn them off, maybe just.
No.
Oh, now mine appears to be on.
Oh, now it's red.
Representative Germana.
And yes, I'm sorry.
Representative Haskins.
Aye.
Representative Howard.
Yes.
Representative Nab.
Yes.
Representative Morse.
Yes.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Fourteen zero, motion passes. Shall it go on consent?
I see no reason for it not to. So thank you very much. Appreciate it, everybody. I'm going to close out the exec session on SB 329. And we have SB 587 coming up at 11 o'clock. So we have a little 15-minute breather here if anybody needs a bio break or whatever. Okay. All right. I am now going to open up our hearing on SB 587 relative to animals brought into this state. And with us today, this morning, again, we have the esteemed Senator Howard Pearl, who is the prime sponsor and will be introducing this bill to our committee. Good morning again.
Good morning again, Chairwoman Aaron and members of the committee. For the record, I am Senator Howard Pearl, representing District 17, and I live in the great town of Loudon. I am here today to introduce Senate Bill 587. And this is a pretty simple bill that came as a request from the rescue community, and we worked in collaboration with the dog owners groups in New Hampshire, as well as with Commissioner Jasper and Dr. Crawford from the Department of Ag, to come up with the language that you have in front of you, which simply allows for the slight change to the quarantine rules, that when animals are traveling into the state, they have, as you all know, they have to go through a mandatory quarantine when they come in from other states. And this would just simply allow animals that had traveled together, could be a litter of puppies or a litter of any animal there that's subject to the quarantine, that when they come in, they've been travel companions along the road the whole way. And currently they would technically have to be separated when they came here to meet the quarantine requirements. And this would just simply allow them to stay together for that quarantine period while they were here, and the commissioner's office, the Department of Ag, was fine with that. It gives them the authority to allow it. It doesn't say it has to happen, but it allows them to do it. So, in a nutshell, that's what the bill does. Another simple change,
Yeah.
and hopefully you'll see your way to pass this one as well.
Thank you, Senator Pearl. Representative Nab, you have a question?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for taking my question.
Good morning.
The age restrictions, is there a definition around that, or is that just
I'm sorry, say it once more.
the question about, or the comment about age restrictions in the bill? Is there more detail about that in line 8?
Line 8, to share primary enclosures. So I may have a different version of that. Oh, there we go. Sorry, I have two different versions.
Okay.
We made a slight change. I'm trying to remember, there was a reason we put that in, and I apologize. Heather, do you remember why we put that in, the age restriction? Oh, that's what it was. That's right. We just wanted it to make sure that the animals weren't too young that were coming in. So we had some guardrails on it to kind of limit it.
Representative Murray.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess, sort of following up on that question with regard to the age restrictions, have we delineated what's too young and then like where the limit is somewhere else in statute?
There is another section, especially with, I'm trying to remember. There is another area that does that. I'll make sure I get a clearer definition for the committee on that if you want one, because I don't remember the exact specifics to it.
So I have a question as to, this is just in reference to litter mates, right? What about animals that come together just in a group?
Yeah, this just kept it to litter mates.
Just to litter mates.
Thinking more of, a litter of puppies or a litter of kittens or something that had come in, that they could stay together as they had traveled. They'd grown up and traveled together.
So if you had just like 3 or 4 dogs that were traveling in a trailer together, those animals would have to be quarantined separately.
Yes, I
Okay.
believe so.
Representative Bixby, you had a question?
Yeah, I was just going to double check, but I'm fairly sure that under the transfer requirements for animals, that there are age restrictions on that.
I believe you're correct too, and that's why I said I'll have to look at it. I just can't remember off the top of my head where it's located in statute.
Representative Nab?
This is sort of a comment question, but we got that email from DOGS, DOGS, the organization,
Yeah.
and they referenced the need for proper age restricted limitations and size of enclosures. So I just want to make, and they had some thoughts on what those should be. So I just want to make sure that lives somewhere.
Yeah, they were actually involved in working
Yeah.
with us and helping us craft this language along with the rescues to make
Okay.
sure that we get something everyone could be good
Okay.
with.
So we think it just lives somewhere else in statute and
Yes.
it's not part of this. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Representative Comtois?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Senator. In working on this bill previously, I believe that we delved into age at that time and really put into statute what age animals could be restricted. Do you recall that?
I do, and I just don't remember the specifics. And
I
my
understand.
apologies for that. That was a couple of years ago at least.
It was, but I just want to clarify that we already have in statute age restrictions.
I'm quite certain we do.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you,
Thank you.
Senator Pearl, for
I'll be-
introducing this bill.
I'll be back at 1.
All right, yeah.
Thanks.
See you then. I would call Heather Faria. Is it Faria? Thank you. From New Hampshire Federation of Humane Organizations. Welcome to Environment and Agriculture. You need your mic on. Thank you. Got it.
Hello.
There you
Yes,
go.
Perfect. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee for hearing my testimony. For the record, my name is Heather Faria. I am the current Vice President of the New Hampshire Federation of Humane Organizations, which is the membership collective of New Hampshire's oldest and largest shelters and rescues. I am also the Executive Director of the Pope Memorial SPCA here in Concord.
Would you mind moving your microphone closer to you?
Yes,
Thank you.
sure.
Just so the folks at home can hear you.
No, I know my voice is soft, so understand. Is this better?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. We are very grateful to Senator Pearl for bringing this bill forward. We've had many conversations with the state vet and the commissioner about the ability to quarantine litter mates together. And what this bill would allow for is essentially granting the commissioner rulemaking authority to address this issue in rules. With regards to some questions that were posed earlier, RSA 437 currently states very clearly that animals cannot be younger than 8 weeks of age prior to transfer into the state. So those age restrictions do live in statute. And there are many other requirements existing in statute and in rules related to the transfer of animals. So this would simply give the commissioner rulemaking authority to address this quarantine issue in rules. So I'd be happy to take any other questions about this issue.
Okay. Representative Dutsey, and before you ask your question, I just want to confirm that currently in RSA 437:8, section 3, number 3, Roman numeral 3, it states no person, firm, corporation, or other entity shall ship or bring into the state of New Hampshire to offer for transfer in the state of New Hampshire any cat, dog, or ferret less than 8 weeks of age. No person, firm, corporation, or other entity shall offer for transfer any cat, dog, or ferret less than 8 weeks of age. So Representative Bixby, that's where it lives in statute. So proceed, Representative Dutsey. Sorry.
No, no problem. Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a little bit off base with this, but how does this get enforced? I mean, we oftentimes hear stories of trucks coming up loaded with dogs and, parking at a rest area and selling them or something like that. So how does this actually get enforced? And is it only, and how does it affect people who go to another state and purchase a dog and then bring it back?
So the state veterinarian only has oversight of things that happen in New Hampshire. and primarily over his licensees. So our organization is made primarily up of licensed facilities. So we are all licensed by the state veterinarian. We are subject to inspection. I think I think in statute, the minimum is once a year. Most of us go through an inspection twice a year and then by complaint. So if the state veterinarian has concerns that are submitted by the public, he'll inspect a licensed facility to follow up on those complaints. So that's primarily how these things are investigated and enforced, is when the public feels that something has happened that shouldn't have. They get reported to the state vet and he investigates. You're welcome.
Representative Murray.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So with clarity, I think we have sort of addressed the issue with regard to age restriction, and as long as those RSAs are cited in lines 4 through 9 somewhere, I think that addresses the issue pursuant to with regard to age restriction, and then it seems that there's probably a separate RSA somewhere regarding size enclosure somewhere else.
That's actually listed in rules. So in
Okay.
addition to RSA 437, we abide by all of the rules in Ag 1700.
Okay.
So oftentimes the commissioner will use rules to sort of delve into the more specific requirements related to animal health. So there's all the RSA stuff and then all the rule
rules.
stuff that we
Yep.
have to comply with.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Representative Comtois.
Thank you. Did you say that was Ag Rule 1700?
I believe so, yes.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Representative Bixby.
Just as a matter of information, the section 437:9 is a list of things that are provided for rulemaking. So it gives a rough outline in statute and then says that the department will cover those in rules.
Okay. Any other questions from the committee? No. Seeing none, thank you very much for you coming and testifying this morning. Anyone
Thank you.
else wish to speak on SB 587? Seeing no one, may I have the blue sheet and do we have anybody online? Do you know that? Okay. I have one person in favor. And I'm going to close out the hearing for SB 587. And I would pose the question, is the committee interested in executing this bill at this time?
Yes.
That would make sense. Okay. Would I hear a motion from someone? Representative Nab.
I would motion ought to pass on Senate Bill 587.
Representative Creighton, seconds. And
second.
Representative Nab, would you like to speak to your motion?
I think this is a good bill that was supported by different humane societies in the rescue community. So I think it makes sense to move forward with it.
Okay, great. I would then direct the clerk to call the roll, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The motion is OTP on SB 587. Representative Creighton.
Aye.
Representative Comtois. Yes. Representative Davis. Yes. Representative Kenny.
Yes.
Representative Potenza.
Yes.
Representative Smart. Yes. Representative Bixby.
Yes.
Representative Dutsey.
Yes.
Representative Murray.
Yes.
Representative Germana.
Yes.
Representative Haskins.
Aye.
Representative Howard.
Yes.
Representative Nab.
Yes.
Representative Morse.
Yes.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
15-0. Shall it go on consent?
I see no reason for it not to. Thank you. That bill will be on consent, though. And I just want to add, for the record, the online portal said that there were 11 people in favor of this bill and 0 opposed. So I'm going to close out the exec for SB 587.
I don't think you ever closed out, did you ever close out for the hearing?
Oh, well,
And that was 11 people online?
yeah. And if I didn't close out the hearing, then I close out the hearing. All right, before we, I know we're running really early and we've been very efficient, and I thank everybody for that. I do want to bring to your attention, I passed out a letter that was composed from our committee to our federal delegation with regard to House Bill 1572, which was prohibiting using mRNA technology in food and requiring the labeling of lab-grown meat and food containing insects. This was a letter that was written collaboration with Representative Bixby and I believe myself and others, and I want to thank everybody for the work on that. If you haven't read through the letter, I will just read it briefly. To our senators and to our House representatives, I'm writing to you on behalf of the State of New Hampshire House of Representatives Committee on Environment and Agriculture. The committee recently reviewed House Bill 1572 entitled Prohibiting Using mRNA Technology in Food and Requiring the Labeling of Lab-Grown Meat and Food Containing Insects. As the title implies, this bill addresses the concerns New Hampshire citizens have regarding what is put in their food and whether additives and ingredients are fully and accurately disclosed. While well-documented testimony indicated that mRNA vaccination technology does not impact our food supply, articles in the journal Molecular Biotechnology published by Nature discuss a long-running effort to genetically modify food as a vehicle for vaccines and other pharmaceuticals. It is the opinion of the committee that food that is used as a drug delivery device needs to be thoroughly labeled and carefully controlled. A second topic of the bill is meat grown from cell culture. It is the opinion of the committee that any food product derived from laboratory culturing of animal cells needs to be clearly labeled in such a way that it will not be confused with meat from a conventionally raised, slaughtered, and processed animal. The bill also raises a concern about food derived from insects. We heard testimony that the only insect currently approved by the FDA for use in food is the cricket, and that current labeling policies do require clear labeling of insects beyond the inadvertent contamination threshold. It is the opinion of the committee that any use of insects in food should be clearly labeled to make sure the consumer is aware of what they are eating. Because all three of these issues are under the jurisdiction of federal law, the committee felt that state-level legislation was inappropriate. We urge you to make sure that these issues are thoroughly addressed by federal law. Thank you for your attention to this matter. I just wanted to know if this, if the committee approves with this letter, I shall then sign it and send it off to our federal delegation. Representative Dutsey.
Yeah, just my copy, just for readability, on the very last paragraph, towards the end of the second sentence, there's an additional a typo, labeled in such a way. Mine says labeled in a such a way. Is that what yours? So that first A needs to be deleted?
Yes.
Ah, yes.
Okay, and I would just, this is minor, but the next sentence here, the bill also raises, I would make that a new paragraph because you're talking about the insects at that point, not the cultured meat. So I would just make that a new paragraph, that's all. But I think it's fine.
Okay. Okay. Representative Comtois?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I think the letter is well written. I do have some concerns because it says, while well-documented testimony indicated that mRNA vaccination does not impact our food supply, more recently it has come to light that mRNA technology is actually being used in our pork, more specifically in the vaccines of the animals. And the other thing is, and I agree with you that the FDA has only approved cricket in our food, but there has been more and more articles talking about worms and things like that, but we haven't discussed that. But I just wanted to bring that to light.
Okay.
So.
Okay, thank you. So I will ask our committee researcher who helped draft this to make those two typo changes, and I'll sign the letter and then we'll send it out. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you, Representative Murray.
Thank you.
My
Thank you, Madam Chair.
apologies.
No, that's okay. I also just wanted to make sure we haven't really addressed any of the bioengineered food disclosure standards that already exist, and I wondered if that was something that needed to be listed in here, because those were drafted December 29th, 2023, mandatory compliance beginning June 23rd, 2025. So it speaks to some of that in that section. So I was just curious.
Representative Bixby.
Yeah, I think that the way that the letter is phrased, especially at the end, the committee felt that the legislation, we urge you to make sure that these issues are thoroughly addressed by federal law. So in fact, if there is a federal law that exists that covers these, then great. If there is a move to change that federal law, then it would be the opinion of the committee that we wouldn't want to have a law that changed it in a way that would diminish this protection. And if there are some aspects of it that are not yet covered, then we would want those to be covered. So it's just really making them aware that we think that these things should be appropriately labeled. And if the labeling is already in place, then great. If not, it should happen. If there's any move to remove labeling that should be there, then we don't want that to happen.
Okay. All right then. Thank you for your review of this, and we will be back here at 1 o'clock. We finished early and we've got some time. Representative Potenza, you have something for the committee?
Yeah, I'm going to agree with Representative Comtois on that line, because just recently, in the last, I'd say 2 to 3 weeks, there has been a ton of information that's come out in the news in regards that certain states are banning this, specifically mRNA in their meat. So I don't like the well-documented, because then it basically, I think I don't know. I think that pigeonholes us to something. I don't like that line. So.
Okay. Would you want to suggest something else?
I'm pretty good at that, so I would be happy to work on. I could literally do that right here before we go to break.
Okay.
Okay.
Sure. Thank you.
I'm not sure that
Right.
we would be happy with anything that was. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a good compromise between some positions that are not exactly the same.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I would just say that what this says is, well documented, I believe, is an adjective for testimony. And so that is a true statement, that we had well documented testimony. So that has nothing to do with what's in the news now. And I will further say that I think I consume a lot of news, read about 3 papers a day, and I haven't seen anything in any of the newspapers, including the Union Leader, that has been talking about this. So I think when you talk about it's in the news, it depends on what news you're consuming. So I would be a little concerned with that statement.
All right. Representative Germana.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And to Representative Dutsy's points, and to reiterate a point I just made, I think this language is well drafted, and I think it's a good compromise. I think we all agree on the importance of labeling, although we may have some disagreements on some of the specifics and details. So I think the language does a nice job of pulling the committee's consensus together. I also agree with Representative Dutsy's point about this refers specifically to the testimony, which is what we did here. And that short of reopening this whole thing and getting a lot more testimony, I don't think we're going to come to a consensus, and we may never, on some of the specifics. But I think this language does a nice job of bringing us to a point we should all be able to agree on.
Okay. Representative Creighton.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I mean, there's always room for improvement. And if Representative Potenza offers better language, I think we should look at that. And so maybe after our committee meeting this afternoon, we take a look at the updated language and see if that works. If it's not, so be it. If it does, then so be it. But I don't have a problem looking at something to improve.
Representative Comtois.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I didn't mean to open up a can of worms. I'm not saying that it.
As long as we're not eating them, that's fine.
Yes. Well, don't hold your breath, because you may be sooner than you think. But I guess what I was trying to say is that, and it's from the pork business, and it states that they are using the mRNA vaccines in pork. I'm not saying that it doesn't say that it's being transferred to the food, but they are using the mRNA vaccines in swine. So I think I just want to make sure that's clarified. I'm not trying to dismiss what this says. I'm also trying to make sure that people understand that just because we say it's indicated does not impact our food supply, that doesn't mean that they're not being vaccinated with the mRNA vaccine, because that is well documented. And that was also said in testimony.
Okay. Representative Howard.
If I remember correctly, thank you, Madam Chair. If I remember correctly, when they talked about the mRNA being used in vaccines and food, they also mentioned that there was no sign at all that it was passed on into the meat.
Representative Morse.
Thank you, Madam Chair. May I recommend that if people have additional concerns that dive in deeper to some of these issues, you send a personal letter to your, representatives. But as far as addressing a letter that represents the committee as a whole, it should be language that we are all in agreement on. And if you want to dive into that deeper, then more power to you to dive into it and write letters and pursue that further. But I think that if we are addressing this letter from the full committee, the language needs to represent the feelings of the full committee, which is that labeling should be appropriate. Thank you.
Representative Comtois.
And thank you, Madam Chair. And I agree that the language should represent the whole committee, but it should also represent the whole testimony that we heard. And the state vet did say that they are using mRNA vaccination technology in animals that are being vaccinated that we're using for food, but it is not impacting our food supply. So, to be totally transparent.
Representative Nab.
Thank you. I mean, I think this letter has a lot more power coming from our committee, and I think if we workshop it at this point, it's going to fall apart. Like, to Representative Germana's point, this is a compromise between different views on this situation, and I think it's a lot more powerful coming from the committee as a whole. So I would leave it as it is. I think we're really opening up a can of worms. Representative Comtois' point. So that's my point. And, I don't really want to be on it if it starts to feel like something that's really one-sided in its viewpoint. Thank you.
Representative Potenza.
Yeah, I'm sorry I opened up a can of worms. I want it to come from the committee. I was here for that testimony and there wasn't a lot. So this makes it sound like, there was such robust testimony. And for the folks that were here, there wasn't a lot of testimony on this subject. And that's why some of this information is happening literally on the fly, and based upon, this isn't something that I'm talking about in the Union Leader. This is in some medical journals. This one's from specifically from the UK, Epoch Times. Yeah, so that's where I'm getting some of my recent information, as well as I think is it Italy that just banned this as well. So that's why I'm just I'm just meaning lab grown meat and stuff like that. I'm fine with the couple of grammatical changes. I rescind my thing. It's fine. I want the committee to move forward with this, and I just, it's the well documented. It's made it sound like we had people out the door, and I don't believe we did. So this wasn't like the glue trap thing. So,
Representative Howard.
I think that, thank you, Madam Chair. I think that the final sentence in this is what we all agree on, and that is about the labeling. I don't think we necessarily need to give an advanced course in this topic to the people to whom we're addressing this letter. That I think we all agree 100% that labeling is the most important thing, and the sentences that come before that are support that very strongly. So I think that we should focus more on what the point is, which is to the proper labeling.
Representative Germana.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just wanted to say in kind of reference to Representative Comtois' point, which I hear and respect, I think that the sentence, while well-documented testimony indicated that mRNA vaccination technology does not impact our food supply. I think that I hear what you're saying, but even from what you just read, right, there's a difference between the mRNA vaccine technology for the swine, but at this point, there isn't evidence that that is being transmitted through the food supply, which is the language that is in the letter.
Right, that is correct, but it wasn't well documented that we didn't hear well documented testimony. We only heard testimony from basically the state vet telling us that this is what he is hearing and what he has seen. That, to me, that's not well documented. So that is my concern. So because when I think of something well documented, I think that there's a stack of papers or many articles telling me that I can go back and look at science and health journals to say that this is true. And we did not have that here in our committee. So that is all I'm saying. I'm just trying to be factual.
Representative Potenza.
how about this real quick, right? Let's just take out well documented, while testimony included, and we're all set. If we're all okay with that, that's one removal, because it wasn't.
Well, Representative Howard, you had something. No. Representative Haskins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My problem with changing it is that I'm not 100% on board with it the way it is. So I'm trying to compromise with it. But if we start to pull back on that, then I'm out. That's my problem.
All right. Well, the thing of it is that we had made a promise actually to the sponsor of this bill that we would write a letter from the committee with regard to our concerns about labeling issues on these specific items. And I still would like to get a letter out from the committee as soon as we can. And I Representative Bixby.
Should we just have a vote to make sure we have consensus and then decide to send it out?
I'm fine with that. Representative Dutzy?
I would just get rid of the word well. Okay, so well documented testimony, because then I think you get the documented testimony, right?
Okay, I'm
and,
good.
yeah, and then I would be.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
I don't think we need to vote. We've got.
All right, we're good. Okay, thank you for that. I appreciate that. And let's go to have lunch. You all set? All right. Okay. Peter. Peter. Yes. I sent you an email with the, yeah, so just email me, type it in and you send it. Thank you. And thank you for doing that. You're a pro. Okay, committee members, please take your seats. Let's get started.
I need to talk to you about the weather again, because I just was informed that we don't really have unanimity on my side in terms of people agreeing to it.
With just a couple of changes?
No, it's more fun. Let's talk after this.
Okay. Huh? Yeah. No, you did not. Thank you. Sure. All right, I'm going to open up the hearing on SB 385 relative to the cost of care fund. And here with us this afternoon, again, is Senator Howard Pearl. Take it away.
Well, thank you again. It's great to be back for a third time in the same day. It's almost like I'm living over here now. For the record, my name is Senator Howard Pearl from Loudon, and I am here to introduce Senate Bill 385 relative to the cost of care fund. This is a bill that the Commissioner from the Department of Agriculture, who I see is here, and hopefully he'll have some convincing comments for you on why you should pass the bill. But this was a request that he had to put in for some language to clean up an issue that he was seeing from instituting the cost of care fund. And for those of you who remember, this was a bill we put in, I think it was 2017 or 2018, we put into effect to help communities deal with the cost of confiscations and things that occur with those expenses around animal cruelty cases. So what this bill will do is simply allow that fund to pay directly to the third party, which often is a rescue, and it will allow those funds to go directly through and not pass through the budget of the town, which is causing some issues with the money coming in and the way they're accounting. So I know the commission will have further comments on the details of that, so I'll wrap it up right there and leave it with you.
All right, thank you so much. Any questions for Senator Pearl? Seeing none, thank you.
Awesome, thank you. And I believe that's my last bill with you today. So
Yes.
hopefully you have a good rest of your day.
Oh, you too. Have fun in ENR and in the Senate.
Slightly off topic, did you get in touch with Senator Innes for the next one?
I tried. He was in a leadership meeting and I have not been able to, but I will confirm with him that he's coming over and one of us will for sure.
Okay, great, thanks.
You got it.
Okay, I would like to call Sean Jasper, Department of Agriculture. Commissioner, welcome.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. I am Sean Jasper, Commissioner of the Department of Agriculture. You know, this is one of those things where sort of kick myself being a guy who was a selectman and I'm currently a member of the Budget Committee in my town, and I should have realized the problem with this. And I don't think that the current language is probably much of an issue for larger towns, but it is for smaller ones, in that when they ask us for reimbursement, that money goes back into the general fund and cannot replenish the fund from whence it came. So it just gets into the fund balance. So the problem is that it really doesn't directly help in the way that we expected it to, because if they don't have a line item equal to what could be their expenses, they've got to find money someplace else. And that was never our intent. Our intent was to say, okay, you've got this problem and you're taking care of animals and we want to help you with your budget. And this does not do that. So this amendment fixes that so that they certify that these services were provided and this was the correct amount. And then it doesn't pass through the town budget, doesn't cause them a problem. The second change is, I don't know who caught this, it wasn't me, but in almost every statute that I've ever seen, it always speaks to the commissioner making these decisions, and this says the commissioner and the state veterinarian, which really is not the proper way to do it. It should just be the commissioner. So those are the changes, and we think it will make a big difference, particularly in smaller towns, allowing them to take care of abused animals.
All right. Any questions for the commissioner? Representative Howard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Who would be among the third party?
So often, as the senator said, it would be rescues. Anybody who normally takes the humane societies take in the animals. We read about it all the time when these animals are seized and they're taken in and cared for, but the towns are billed. And in many cases, this is why the animals aren't seized at all, because of the expense to the town.
Sure, follow.
Would that include individuals outside of societies or agencies?
It could potentially include those. If a town found somebody who was willing to take them in and they decided they were the proper people to care for them, yes, I believe so. I don't see anything in here. It says a third party, and it doesn't state the type of third party.
Representative Bixby.
Yeah, just a little bit more background on this, and just and you can confirm that I've got this right. The Cost of Care Fund was created in response to the Great Dane situation in Wolfboro, where there were 75 Great Danes that had to be seized because they were being kept in very negligent conditions, and that was a substantial cost to the town of Wolfboro, which figuring out how to deal with that cost was very complicated. It was determined that there were certain situations where town law enforcement may be unwilling to deal with situations of animal negligence abuse because of the potential cost. The idea of the Cost of the Care Fund would be to take that excuse off the table, so that law enforcement would definitely take care of the of investigating and prosecuting animal negligence abuse, and the Cost of Care Fund would allow for the taking care of animals who were seized in that situation, and then the animals that were seized, the law enforcement would be in charge of figuring out who would take care of them, but it would usually be a third party. Typically it's a rescue organization or a shelter, but it could be individuals who also have some connection with the animals, as was written in another piece of legislation. So basically am I correct in thinking that you're just here with this amendment or this bill in order to make sure that that process can work more effectively for those situations?
That's exactly true. Thank you, Representative. And I would point out that still with the cost of care fund out there, what is, to the best of my knowledge, always attempting to be done is to work with the owners of the animals to have them surrender them. And when they do that, then there is no cost to this fund or to the towns. That doesn't always happen, but often the police or the prosecutors will tell people, if you do this, you're not going to be charged with as many counts, because they can be charged with a count of cruelty against each animal that has been determined to be improperly cared for. And so that is a method that is used effectively, and it does reduce often the cost to the fund or the municipalities. But
Commissioner Jasper, may I ask, do you know how much money is in that fund currently?
you know, I had that prepared for the Senate hearing on that, and we just moved, and I started out yesterday morning without even having a computer, and I cannot tell you that amount right now. I think we're in the $500,000 range. I will tell you that also because we've been packing up and moving, and because we've had the other programs, I have a number of applications on my desk that are probably totaling over $100,000 for reimbursement right now. That's a ballpark, but
And how does that fund get replenished?
it is a budget item right now, and there is a cap of $2 million on the fund. Currently, to build it up, it has been budgeted at $300 or $350,000 a year, I believe. So we'll have more money coming in July. I do expect that I will be ratcheting that back based on the rate of spend, but did want to get it to a reasonable amount so that if there were another case like the Great Dane one, that the fund would be adequately funded. I'm hopeful that we will continue to notch it up for a while, but not at the rate we are at the moment.
Do you know whether or not the trend of seizure is going up or down at all?
I don't know because I don't have any history as to what towns were doing before. I know that what's going on right now in the current law has been somewhat of an impediment because those small towns can't have their fund refunded, if you will. So, but some of these are really, really difficult for departments, police departments, or other agencies to move forward with seizures. We've had a couple that have been still very difficult and time consuming to actually get to that point where the animals are seized. And the most recent one, which was pretty horrific, ultimately, I think all but a couple animals were surrendered.
Representative Murray?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for taking my question. So I had a question. In reading the current bill, it does say that there's the ability to respond to such applications within 15 days and distribute no more than $500,000 per application.
Mm-hmm.
So my question was then, if we're only at $300 or so $1,000 or what have you, is there any concern that one application alone could deplete the entire thing?
No, we're over 500,000 in the fund right now, and as of July 1st, it will be another 3 or 350 going into it. So no, I don't have any concerns with that currently.
But yeah, I think isn't it possible though, as a commissioner, that you could go to fiscal committee and request extra funds to be placed in this if you had an emergency of some sort?
I think that is always an option. Yes.
Okay, Representative Murray, follow up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Is there a list of allowable costs for reimbursements?
There are, and some of the things really become frustrating that people will submit, and in some cases, when they haven't been seized, questionable as to why it's even happening. Quite frankly, there have been animals that have been seized and are still under the ownership of the person who they were seized from, and those animals have been spayed or neutered. That's certainly not a reimbursable expense, and probably shouldn't have taken place at all. Others are like vaccinations for rabies, which is not an emergency per se. So we do have a list, and we do have an amount not to exceed. So if some rescue comes in and wants to charge more than what's on the list, they don't get reimbursed for that. So this is not something that is just whatever you think, you should do. No, you have to make choices on how you want to care for those animals, because this is not just whatever you want to do.
Follow up.
And thank you. And just so I'm clear, this is available to anything from a bunny to a horse.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, Representative Potenza.
So I have a couple questions. First, thank you to Representative Bixby, because some of us that are new didn't understand the history, so I thank you for that backstory. Just off the top of your head, doesn't need to be an exact number. Can you tell me how much that whole Great Dane incident cost?
Well, that didn't cost us anything, but it was, and again, I'm going to say that I think there were charges that were incurred that wouldn't have been paid from here. That was I want to say, and maybe Representative Bixby has a better memory, I want to say they were saying it was close to $500,000.
The HSUSA said that they spent $3 million.
What?
And one of the reasons that we put a lot of department oversight in the cost of care fund is because we were a little bit dubious.
Yeah, they were charging for people from their national organization to fly back and forth, and I'm assuming that they were including hotel rooms and things like that. So there were a lot of things going on in what they were saying was the cost that we would never allow in this fund.
Okay. A couple. So then my other question has to do with the amount. So you said there's over 500,000 in there. So if, let's say, is there a point where we don't keep putting into the fund? And if we draw off the fund, does that go back into general funds? How does that work?
It's a budgetary item, so it would be capped at 2 million. So what I would expect is I am quite confident I will not be commissioner when the fund gets to $2 million. But what a commissioner would do is looking at the budget saying, okay, our rate of spend has been X amount. And if we put Y amount in, will be over 200, and would just request a smaller amount. But what I would also assume is then that you are correct if that in fact there had been more money budgeted, there's going to be that safeguard that simply the Treasury is not going to put the money into the fund.
Okay. Last real quick question.
Sure.
Why don't we have this act take effect immediately and not 60 days?
I would be perfectly happy with an amendment to have it take effect immediately. There was just, I didn't see that.
No.
And this is typical legislation saying 60 days. This is one that there's no need to notify anybody. There's no need to wait for 60 days. So I see absolutely no reason not to amend that to take effect upon passage. Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Creighton and then Bixby.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Commissioner. Just to make sure I got it straight in my head. So the town seizes an animal, sends it to SPCA or whoever they send it to for care. Currently, the town doesn't have the budget to do that, so they go to this fund.
So I'm sorry, there's so much
The
noise.
the town does not have a budget for it, so the state gives them the money.
No, so that is the current problem.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's the
Yeah,
current.
I mean,
But the town can't take that money, transfer it to that organization.
and even if we wrote them a check,
Yeah.
say there was a billing for $50,000 and we wrote them a check for $50,000, under the Municipal Budget Act, that $50,000 would be seen as unanticipated revenue, and they still would not have a budget line item to pay that
So they still couldn't
$50,000.
do it. Okay. I got
So
you.
that's the problem, and frankly, I should have caught it, somebody should have caught it,
I got you.
but here we are. trying to fix it.
Representative Bixby.
Yeah, this is just a minor technical thing. So the line where the knocking the state veterinarian out of the review, that is, it's typical in legislation that the commissioner gets charged with doing absolutely all of the work, and it is assumed that the commissioner will then assign that to the appropriate person in the department, right?
Exactly. What happens with this is the state veterinarian does his review of it, makes a recommendation to me, and I sign off on it. I mean, this actually sets up a legislative problem where the two of us could disagree and perhaps nothing would get done because it doesn't give the authority to anybody to make the decision. This anticipates that we would both agree on everything, and that's not typical. What is typical is that there is one person who is responsible for making a decision, so a decision can be made. If there were three involved, okay, that might be different, but but even then.
Okay. Any other questions for the commissioner? Seeing none, thank you very much
All
for
right.
testifying on this bill this
Thank you.
afternoon. And I call Heather Faria from New Hampshire Federation of Humane Organizations.
Good afternoon. Thank you for hearing my testimony, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Heather Faria. I am the Vice President of the New Hampshire Federation of Humane Organizations and the Executive Director of the Pope Memorial SPCA here in Concord. The New Hampshire Federation of Humane Organizations, we are a group of New Hampshire rescues, SPCAs, and humane societies, often partnered with municipalities and charged with taking care of animals in the situation that you just heard the commissioner describe. So through our municipal partnerships, we often take custody of animals that have been seized, and we provide the care that has been requested for the duration of investigations and trials through the final dissolution. So we are those third parties that would potentially be awaiting payment. So what this bill would allow is for the payment to come directly to us. Really, that's the only change. So the municipality would still be charged with completing the application, providing all the proper documentation, meeting the requirements of the application. It would simply allow the funds to come directly to us rather than back to the municipality and then through their process and to us, as the commissioner described. We are obviously, as you would anticipate, very much in favor of this bill and hope that you would consider passing it. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Representative Murray.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for taking my question. Is there a situation that I just want to make sure if a reimbursement came to you, then would you then notify the town or municipality that you've received reimbursement and you're expecting? I'm just trying to figure out, because a bill would have been sent right to the municipality for something.
Sure.
And then
So it's
sorry.
Yep, go ahead. So it'd be like any other bill you would receive. We would bill them. They would understand that there's an outstanding balance. And when we receive payment, we would send them notice, like you would when you pay something, you receive notice that that has been paid. And so that would be standard for them to know.
Any other questions? No? Seeing none. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Of course, thank you.
And Jen Zazella? Oh, you have copies of your testimony? Oh, you can pass it around if you like, or just give it to the clerk. Oh, pass it around? Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Jen Zazella from the Governor's Committee on Humane Treatment of Animals.
Sorry, you can't read my writing.
It's okay. No
My name
worries.
is Jerry Zazula, and I'm co-chair of the Governor's Commission on the Humane Treatment of Animals. I did send in written testimony on your portal, but I thought I would come and speak a little bit about how important this cost of care is to us to keep tabs on and make sure that it's going to work to its fullest extent. Commissioner Jasper covered it very well. Representative Bixby talked a lot about the history of the need of it, and I can answer more questions related to that because it actually goes back to the 2008 report that the Governor's Commission did on the cost analysis of animal cruelty in New Hampshire. And it was at that time that we recognized that many towns were hesitant to pursue cruelty cases to their fullest because of the cost to the towns. And this is both with, primarily with large numbers of animals, hoarding cases and things like that, because that can just break the budget, to even some of the more expensive single or double animals, where a town did not have anything budgeted for any of this. It can break the bank. And we found that they were often actually leaving animals in the custody of the owner when they shouldn't have been to save the town money. We found that oftentimes they were not prosecuting, they were getting the people to turn over the animals and not prosecute just so that they could not have to pay long-term for the care of the animals. So we were worked on trying to figure out ways to do this, and your committee was the one that got it passed, and we were very anxious and happy that that was done. It was a lot of work. We had been through years of discussion about this and how to do it. We were looking at the victims' compensation laws. We were looking at a lot of different things to come up with this. So Commissioner Jasper's been very good and shared with us some of the applications and what's going on, and will continue to do so that we can kind of keep tabs on this. But it did become apparent that this extra step or extra two steps, because sometimes there's more than one third party involved, so that it'll help tremendously to have the process work better, because the town doesn't have to have any initial output. It can go directly to the third parties.
Thank you. Any questions? Representative Murray.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I just want to make sure that I'm clear in the accounting portion of this. If you're saying there's could be one or two third-party entities that then could be reimbursed, is there any situation where where's that oversight being held? Is that at the department level, or is that then at the cost of care fund, or?
The way that the application is, there has to be receipts sent in for everything, and that's still going to be the responsibility of the town. But let's say that the animals are housed in a humane society that doesn't have a veterinarian. And a veterinarian needs to go in and do some emergency work. There may be two bills, one from the Humane Society or shelter and one from the veterinarian, so that the cost of care fund could pay each individually rather than reimburse the town and then have the town have to figure out how to pay those two third parties. Or
Okay. Any other questions from the committee? No, seeing none. Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate it. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak on this bill? Okay, we got the blue sheet. On the online portal, there's 10 in support, 0 people opposed. On the
10?
Yeah, 10. On the blue sheet, we have 2 in favor and none opposed. With that, I'm going to close out the hearing for SB 385. And I know that we had heard something from Representative Potenza about perhaps amending this bill to say the act should take effect immediately after passage, but I mean, unless you guys want to come back and exec one bill, if anybody is interested in execing it this afternoon, right now. Do I hear a motion?
Well, I think that we have another hearing that's supposed to start at 1:30.
So
I
we
think
can
we should,
exec this after?
we can exec this afternoon after we do the hearing on the other bill.
Sounds like a plan. Okay. With that, I'm going to open up the hearing for SB 545, establishing a committee to study the scope and role of veterinary technicians. And I have both a card for Senator Sue Prentice, but I also have a card for Jenny Horgan. I believe you are representing Senator Prentice to introduce the bill. That is fine with me, if it's fine with the rest of the committee. Yeah, go right ahead.
Wonderful. So my name is Jenny Horgan. I am the policy director for the Senate Democratic Caucus. Senator Prentice apologizes. There are a lot of hearings going on today, and unfortunately she couldn't be here, but if it's all right with the chair and the members, I can read some testimony that she provided to me. And then I know Rob Johnson is also here, who's been deeply involved in the bill. So
Please
that's
proceed.
good.
Yep.
Amazing. Thank you. So during the pandemic, many Granite Staters turned to New Hampshire farms for their food supply. Trusted community partners, the backbone of New Hampshire. I can remember driving up to Piper Hill Road in Claremont and seeing a line outside LeClaire Farmstead in Plainfield, McNamara Dairy, and Riverview Farms. My point, when we needed the agricultural community, they were there for us. Now they need us, the legislature, to be there for them. Livestock producers all across the U.S., including here in New Hampshire, are dealing with a serious shortage of large and food animal veterinarians. According to the USDA, in 2023, the shortage of rural veterinarians has reached an all-time high, with 500 counties in 46 states deemed as having a critical shortage of large animal vets. The shortfall poses risk not only to livestock and farmers, but the country's food supply. Unfortunately, it looks like the shortage is only going to deepen as the pipeline for new veterinarians, especially those who specialize in large and agricultural animals, continues to stagnate. Over the past 6 months, I have been engaged in conversations about how to address New Hampshire's emerging large animal veterinarian shortage. As of August 31st, 2023, the northernmost large animal clinic in the state is closed its doors, leaving a large portion of the state with even less access to services. I learned recently that a large animal veterinarian practice in my district is preparing to close. We need both a short-term and a long-term approach. Over the past few months, I have engaged stakeholders in discussions, including the New Hampshire Farm Bureau Federation, large and small animal veterinarians, the Department of Agriculture, and the Office of Professional Licensure and Certification. While we don't yet have a long-term solution, the role of veterinarian techs in the field was a point of consensus, and that we may be able to enhance their roles to create some relief for the large animal veterinarians. Senate Bill 545 proposes to study the vet tech role and the opportunities that could benefit the system of care for our large animals, our food animals. This bill includes key questions about the current and potential future role and who we believe needs to be at the table to best inform the legislature. Thank you for allowing me the time to bring this forward to your attention and advance one pathway towards a solution. So again, I would ask you to defer any questions. Senator Prentice is more than happy to answer any. I'm happy to take back to her.
Okay. Representative Comtois.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for coming here. But could I have that testimony for the record?
Yes, of
Thank
course,
you.
absolutely.
Okay. Any questions?
Thank you.
Representative Bixby.
Yeah, so this is coming to us now as a study committee bill. It was initially submitted in the Senate as a bill to just do it. What were the impediments to going ahead with it as it was written in the Senate?
Yeah, no, thank you so much for the question, Representative. I think Rob has been deeply involved in that process and would be much better suited to answer that question
then
than
I
me.
will put that off. Remember that question, Mr. Johnson.
Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you for introducing the bill.
Thank you so much.
And we Give our regards to Senator Prentice.
Will do. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll call Rob Johnson from New Hampshire Farm Bureau.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Rob Johnson, representing the New Hampshire Farm Bureau as a Federation's policy director. And we do support Senate Bill 545. We have worked with Senator Prentice on the bill. I'll kind of start with answering Representative Bixby's question first.
I just ask you to move the microphone closer. Thank you.
Excuse me. The bill is introduced, established a large animal veterinary incentive payment program. And the goal of such programs are to incentivize large animal veterinarians to practice in an underserved area. Senator Prentice's bill incentivized veterinarians to practice in the northern part of the state by reimbursing a percentage of their veterinary school tuition if they agreed to practice in the region for a period of time. And I believe the bills introduced was a 20% payment for each 3 years that they agreed. As there is a similar federal program already being funded that has not been utilized in New Hampshire, it was our agreement that is introduced that had little chance of moving forward. So when it's placed, the senator introduced this bill after consulting with us. Our president, Joyce Brady, has named a group. It's kind of we'll call it a task force that initially met this past fall with a representative from the New Hampshire VMA, a representative from what's the group I want to say? The Vet Techs Association, the state veterinarian, number of our leaders, and some of their veterinarians, kind of just spitball, looking at this issue. What can we do, and this and that. And this was one of the ideas that had come up. We had a couple of our members, their veterinarians, had suggested that maybe the licensure of vet techs would, the thought being, would provide a higher level of training that would make veterinarians more comfortable in giving these technicians greater responsibilities. Because in the end, they're working basically off of the veterinarian's licenses, at least as I understand it. And now all this would help reduce the vet's workload. And we've heard some veterinarians who tell us it's not going to help, and we've heard others that think it's a good idea. So that's why we said, well, let's study it. Let's get all the players in a room and really take a look at that to see if it will do anything. So that's where it came about. And just let me give you a little bit of background on this whole vet shortage. And as Senator Prentice said in her remarks that were read, that this is not unique to New Hampshire. It's not. It's nationwide, and it isn't something that just happened overnight. It's been ongoing. But I was looking at it's an agricultural consultant firm that it's the Van Trump report that is widely read, and they had an article a few months back entitled "America's Large Animal Veterinarian Shortage is Barreling Towards Crisis Levels," to give you an idea. And it cites a report that was authored in 2022 by a Cornell University economist, Clinton Yell, which he put together for the Farm Journal Foundation, that found that only about 3 to 4% of new veterinary school graduates pursue livestock or other food animal practice areas. 40 years ago, that number was 40%. Just 40 years ago. In 2003, the AVMA statistics show that of the 82,700 veterinarians nationwide in clinical practice, only 3.6% practice primarily delivering care to animals raised for food or fiber. Another 4.1% practice delivering care to equids, to equines, donkeys, that type. Another 7.5% are dual practice companion and large animal, while a vast majority, over 70%, primarily practice delivering to the equine community. Why is the shortage? On average, veterinary school graduates finish school nearly $200,000 in debt. The better pay and more reasonable work hours that go with a practice focusing primarily or exclusively on companion animals is attractive to a profession having the added stress of dealing with animal owners in life and death situations on a regular basis. There's a physical toll experience working with large animals, not to mention inherent dangers. A mental toll also from exhaustion and working irregular hours, day and night, especially when you're dealing with, emergencies that many livestock owners have on occasion. As well as a considerable amount of driving time in rural areas. As veterinarians, when they're talking, they call it windshield time. And driving to these appointments make days even longer. All this easily leads to burnout in the industry, both from the job and just the lifestyle in general. Also a factor is that 63% of vet school graduates are female, while 37% are men. As an old-time veterinarian said to me not long ago, women are a lot smarter than us men. They value work-life balance as they should and realize they can make double the money caring for companion animals. Madam Chair, I'll leave it at that, and we ask that you approve this study. Thank you.
Any questions from the committee? Representative Haskins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't know if you can answer this, and it may not be germane, but I think I read that there's a conglomeration going on where corporate entities are buying up small veterinary practices. Does this feed into the problem? Do you know?
I believe it's a factor. That's something we are trying to look at. Actually, our organization, New Hampshire Farm Bureau, we adopted a resolution this past year asking our national organization to actually put some pressure on USDA to conduct a study on that very issue. And the reason we asked for USDA to do it, years ago, USDA conducted a study, a separate issue, but it was a rural health care. And so we thought, well, this is similar only with animals, and they have the resources to do it. But yes, I think that's an excellent question. I think it probably is a factor in certain regards.
Representative Bixby.
Yeah, I have a small technical question, which I don't, I mentioned it to Senator Pearl, but I don't know if this is something that you would weigh in or not, weigh in or not. But as written, the bill from the Senate says that it's going to be a 3-member study committee, and I was wondering if there would be any objection to making that 4 members, so that a 3-member committee with a 3-member quorum would, and that seemed, the 3-member quorum seems like a recipe for failed meetings, and by adding another member, I think we might be able to make that a little bit more resilient.
No objection on our part.
Okay.
Okay. Representative Creighton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for testimony. What I didn't know was that you had tapped my phone when I was talking to my daughter. She graduated from vet school and loves horses, but is not working with horses. My question though is on this subcommittee, what would you envision as an outcome? What would you expect them to come back with? I mean, just conceptually.
Yeah, a recommendation of whether or not it makes sense to pursue licensure of vet techs. There is licensure in some states, but
And for a follow-up.
that's the core of what we're looking for.
And that licensure would gain what capability that we don't have now?
Yeah, I guess the thinking, at least from some of the discussions some of our members we've had with veterinarians, it would be a higher level of training, the certification that would make veterinarians feel more comfortable in giving responsibility to the vet techs. Because really the techs are working under the veterinarian's license, and if they have that extra training, liability wise and that type of thing, that's the thought process behind it. Whether that's true or not,
And that's why you're
we
kind
don't
of
know.
studying.
That's right.
Gotcha. Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
Representative Smart.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In the states that do require licensure for vet techs, how many of those vet techs are actually working with agriculture animals?
Yeah, that's a fair question. I couldn't tell you. I couldn't even tell you how many states. I haven't looked at it, studied it, how many have licensure. Yeah.
Something the committee should look at. Representative Comtois.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for taking my question. It's kind of a question, comment type deal. So currently, in the state of New Hampshire, we have a shortage of veterinarians, whether it be in small animal or large animal. I do believe. Would you say that is correct?
I don't know about the companion animal. There may well be, but
There is.
it's certainly. I don't think it's of the magnitude of the large animal, at least
follow
from what I've heard. I know that our members who are having trouble finding a veteran service, it's with their livestock, not with their companion animals.
Okay, and thank you for that. And obviously, I mean, I understand the value of large animal vet. I mean, there is no amount of money that someone that has one can actually put on when they need the care. And personally, having my vet come out on 4th of July on a Sunday or at midnight when it's freezing to care for an animal is just amazing. And so I can understand why a lot of people kind of cater to the enclosed, climate-controlled companion animal. When looking at this, do you think that currently a licensure system may look something similar to the nursing program where you could have like a lower tech, then kind of like the LNA, the RNA, kind of like a stepping stone. And maybe not everything has to be done through schooling, but could be done through experience, because I think experience, especially from a highly trained veterinarian, goes a long way, because nothing can be said for experience. Do you see the committee looking at a structure similar to that?
Certainly, it's interesting you asked that question, because recently I was talking with somebody about this issue, and they mentioned one concern that some techs they've heard have is that the in effect, by having licensure in a state, de facto it's a requirement. And would there be the ability? I don't know if it's that way in other states that have it. If there is the ability to be, to be a licensed vet tech and a non-licensed vet tech, I don't know. That's again part of the reason that we're looking at the study. Madam Chair, I have one more item I can mention to you that kind of maybe lends a little bit of hope to this whole issue. Just recently, the AVMA, the American Vet Medical Association, if I can find it here, which are they're responsible for accrediting veterinary medical schools. They had a press release where they announced that there are 14 proposed new veterinary colleges around the country. And you may say, well, that's not that many, but when you think we only have 33 now, 14, and even if half of them go through the process would really be a boom. So there is a ray of hope, though that's down the road a bit.
Good to know. All right, any other questions for Mr. Johnson? Seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak on this bill? Do we have a count for? There were 5 people online in support of the bill. All support, no opposition. And on the blue sheet, we have 1 person in support. With that, I'm going to close out the hearing for SB 545. So, I guess we can talk about executing this bill and the bill that we heard prior, SB 385. And I guess we should do SB 545 first, and I believe that Representative Bixby has an amendment to that bill, which increases the size of this study committee by one person, so that in a situation where they need a quorum of 3, they will have 4 people on the committee instead of 3.
We've
So,
already done the amendment.
no, we did not do the amendment. He mentioned it. Well, he already drafted that with OLS. And so I would like to open up the exec session for SB 545, if that's okay with everybody. Yeah. And Representative Bixby, I believe, has a motion.
Yes, so I'd like to, on a motion of OTP, I'd like to offer the following amendment, Amendment S 2024-1492H.
Mm-hmm.
We want to adopt that, right?
Yes, adopt amendment. And,
Representative Creighton seconds.
okay, and may I speak?
I
to-
second it.
You may speak to the amendment.
Okay, so, as I alluded to during testimony, the bill as it came to us had 2 House members and 1 Senate member and a quorum of 3. Experience in the past has been that it is not uncommon for not all of the members of a study committee to make it on every occasion. So I thought that it would be prudent to add 1 more member to the committee from the House of Representatives, and in consultation with our chair, we decided that it would make sense to make that that second new member of it a member of our committee. So the amendment has 2 members from ENA, 1 member from Executive Departments and Administration, and 1 Senate member. And that's what the amendment does.
Representative Comtois.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wholeheartedly concur with this amendment from experience. And it is essential that you have 3 members from the House, in my experience.
Agree. Any other discussion on this amendment? Seeing none, I'd like the clerk to take the roll call on adopting this amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We're adopting 2024-1492H. Representative Creighton.
Aye.
Representative Comtois, yes. Representative Davis. Yes. Representative Kenny.
Yes.
Representative Potenza.
Yes.
Representative Smart. Representative Bixby.
Yes.
Representative Dutsy. Representative oh, she's not here. Okay, Representative Murray.
Yes.
Representative Germana.
Yes.
Representative Haskins.
Aye.
Representative Howard.
Yes.
Representative Nab.
Yes.
Representative Morse.
Yes.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
14-0. Amendment is adopted.
Do I hear a motion?
I would like to move OTPA with amendment 2024-1492H.
Representative Comtois.
I'll second that.
Seconds. Would you like to speak to your motion? Representative Bixby.
So I think that from what we just heard in testimony, it makes an awful lot of sense to study this. It will resolve some of the questions that came up during the course of testimony, and I think that this is a real problem that needs to be addressed.
Okay, Representative Comtois.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is also a very hot topic at the Governor's Commission on the Humane Treatment of Animals, and because of the shortage, not only in large animal, but also in companion animal veterinarians.
Anyone else? Okay, seeing no request for further comment, I would ask the clerk to call the roll.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is an OTPA on SB. Oh, I have the wrong bill.
545.
Thank you. Representative Creighton.
Aye.
545.
Representative Comtois, yes. Representative Davis. Yes. Representative Kenny.
Yes.
Representative Potenza.
Yes.
Representative Smart. Representative Bixby.
Yes.
Representative Murray. Representative Germana.
Yeah. Yes.
Representative Haskins.
Aye.
Representative Howard.
Yes.
Representative Nab.
Yes.
Representative Morse. Madam Chair,
Yes.
14-0. Shall it go on consent?
No objection. Okay, I'll close the exec on SB 545. And would the committee entertain execing SB 385 relative to the cost of care fund? Any objection? All right, so I'll open the exec session for SB 385. And wait, let me get to the bill here. Okay, do I hear a motion? Representative Creighton,
I move ought to pass on SB 385.
do I hear a second? Representative Bixby.
I'll second that.
Okay, would you like to speak to your motion?
I just refer back to the testimony. I think it's a good idea and we should move forward.
Okay. Thank you. Any discussion on this bill? Representative Bixby.
I think that having been involved with the initial creation of the cost of care fund, I think that these minor corrections to it make an awful lot of sense, and we should pass it.
Okay. Make it so.
OTP on SB 385, Representative Creighton.
Aye.
Representative Comtois, yes. Representative Davis. Representative Kenny.
Yes.
Representative Potenza.
Yes.
Representative Smart. Representative Bixby.
Yes.
Representative Murray.
Yes.
Representative Germana.
Yes.
Representative Haskins.
Aye.
Representative Howard.
Yes.
Representative Nab.
Yes.
Representative Morse. Madam Chair,
Yes.
14-0. Shall it go on consent?
Yes. And I close out the exec session for SB 385. And that completes our work on these 4 Senate bills today. We have no other Senate bills ahead of us at this time. So at this time, our work is complete for the year. And thank you all for your work on these.
Mention our field trip on the 3rd.
And we have a field trip scheduled for May 3rd, which Representative Creighton, would you like to fill everybody in on?
Yeah, we're going to, it's a redo from last month that we got snowed out. We're going to Waste Management in Rochester, starts at 9 o'clock, goes till 10:30. And I will send out the details and another invite probably by the end of this week. So everyone's got it on your calendar. But May 3rd, 9 o'clock, we meet there. They've got a bus there. They take us around, show us all the trash, and what other better way could you spend than with trash? So invite everyone to join us.
Okay, Representative Comtois.
Thank you. And also on that same day is the Farm and Forest Expo over at the Deerfield Fairgrounds.
Thank you for that reminder. Yes. Dress code for the landfill, do you know?
What you're wearing now represents. Wear jeans and rubber boots or, stuff you don't mind getting dirty. Dress shoes.
Representative Howard.
Yeah.
Could you just
so-
send us the details on that, on the Deerfield Farm?
Yeah, I will send out
That'd
the
be great.
information about that. I know that we get some free tickets or something from the Department of Agriculture. Commissioner Jasper sent me an email about that. I think it was last week. So what I will do is I'll make sure I get that out to everybody. Okay? All right. Representative Comtois.
Yeah, so if you can go on to New Hampshire Farm Forest Expo.org too to get all the information and find out who the exhibitors and everything are also.
And I would like to remind Representative Nab, Creighton, and Bixby to get me your committee reports for the bills that we exec today as soon as you can. And
p.m. and on the Saturday p.m. and on the Saturday the 4th, it's 9 a.m. to 4 p.m.
Okay. All right, one other thing. I know that Representative Bixby, did you want to discuss this or in private or?
I want to discuss it with you first.
Oh, discuss it with me.
So,
Okay.
But I think, there's still a little bit of, disagreement about the letter, and so I think that we might propose that, rather than it being, signed by the committee as a whole, that any members of the committee who want to sign onto it, would, forward the names to you, and then those signatures can go on as people are signing.
This letter was being sent to them by me as chair.
Right.
And I didn't have any expectation that everybody had a signature, in other words, a physical signature on the letter.
Right.
It was just written by me, well, it was going to be sent from me to our federal delegation members. And I guess, just writing on behalf of our committee based on the information regarding that bill, 1572. So,
I think maybe you and I should discuss, and then,
okay.
because I don't think that I don't know that a full committee discussion is going to get to a resolution.
Okay.
That is,
I mean, I could write it just from me and not from the entire committee. That's okay too.
okay, so, yeah, let's you and I discuss, and then we can.
All right. With that, I'm going to adjourn our meeting for this afternoon. And if I hear from any further Senate bills, I will schedule a meeting, a further meeting in the future. But as of this time, we have no other committee meetings scheduled to deal with any Senate bills. So we'll see. Our work could be finished today. I don't know. Representative Smart.
Do I need to use my microphone?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Who determines the committee for SB 545 and how do the representatives know? I mean,
So
does that
the speaker, if the bill gets passed through the House, which it'll be on consent, so my guess is the bill gets passed. However, the Senate would have to concur with it, which I'm sure they will, and then the governor would have to sign it. If it gets signed into law, then what happens is the Speaker of the House would assign the people to be on this committee. What the Speaker has requested when we do these study committees now is that we recommend individuals from our committee to be considered for membership of the study committee. And normally, the person who introduced or proposed the bill would also, I would imagine, Senator Prentice would be chosen to be the Senate member on the committee. So that's kind of how that works. It would start in the fall, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering.
yeah.
I would be on it. I mean, I don't have a problem. I've already done some research on it. Don't get paid very well.
Okay,
To get kicked in the teeth in the middle of freezing cold.
yeah. Okay, well, I'll put your name down. Representative Bixby,
Yeah, just a little more clarification on that process. So,
did I get it wrong?
you didn't, you covered most of the ground, but because it's a Senate bill, the Senate member will be the convening member.
Yes,
And then,
Which is nice.
Yeah.
and because we specify which committees, people will come from, it is, the speaker will have to choose 2 people from our committee and 1 from
From the
ED&A.
ED&A.
And typically what happens is that the chair will make recommendations to the speaker, and then the speaker will listen to the chair's recommendations. That doesn't always happen, but it usually happens. So that's the basic process.
So when you say the chair,
I'm talking about Judy. Yeah. The chair of this committee will make the recommendations for 2 members from this committee. And so once the governor signs it, Judy will probably send out a email saying, is anybody interested? And if you're interested, then
Well,
say,
maybe I'll
then
ask today. Who
raise
is
your
inter-
hand.
Who's interested?
Massive number of responses that she gets will make the choice very difficult.
Well, you get 2 people involved still. You were vet
Okay.
tech, right?
Yeah.
You get 2 vet techs, but they're
Smart, Kenny.
And then I
But-
think,
but who else
I
on
think
your
Allison
side?
is also interested.
Allison? Okay, that's good to know.
So,
All right,
yeah, so that probably,
okay.
so,
And then someone from ED&A who can talk about licensure.
yeah, and then the other thing I was gonna mention is that, depending on when the governor signs it, it actually is conceivable that it could happen, that it could be, start earlier than in the fall, if the Senate member chooses to convene before then for an organization meeting.
Right.
No, actually not in July.
No, it would have to be after August, I believe.
Well, no,
Or before like June 10th.
yeah, so it can be, so basically July is pretty much blacked out and August is mostly blacked out from doing legislative business. So it could start before, either in June or start in September.
Okay. On another subject, just before we all leave, I want to check on something here because we had a homestead food bill, 2 homestead food bills in our committee. And one of them was we changed the language so that it would expand the offerings of foods that could be sold at homestead food stands to be pickles, salsa, relishes. Remember that? And that bill is going to be heard this Thursday in the Senate. With that being said, I know that we had discussed about establishing a food safety subcommittee. And I have names down here to be on that subcommittee as myself, Representative Bixby, Representative Coulon, Representative Comtois, Representative Sofakaitis, and Representative Murray. And I would imagine we would, I don't know how soon we could get together and have meetings to discuss with DHHS Food Safety Division, that's Colleen Smith and Abigail Rogers, talk to them about the possibilities of further expansion of the homestead food safety legislation, RSAs, to at least look at them, because I know people have come to us in various forms to say that the food licensure laws are confusing and would like to have us take a look at that and see where we can make some clarifications, where we might be able to make some expansions and make some changes in those RSAs. So that's what this subcommittee would be engaged in doing. Representative Bixby?
Now, I believe that we voted that the second of those bills interim study.
Right.
And so this subcommittee would be
Looking at that.
looking at that. And typically, so we can start working on interim study bills before the fall.
July, yeah.
But we can't do it in July or August, but we could do it in May or June if the speaker lets us.
Right.
And that is often a matter of whether the speaker perceives the resources such as this room and us as being otherwise constrained, or whether whether this room will be free and whether the members of the subcommittee would be free. My guess is that the members of the subcommittee would be free, and I don't. So unless there's some conflict with committees of conference using this room, I think that it would be feasible to start working on it before summer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it might be nice to get that sort of off
Off the table,
off
yeah.
the table. But we can't do it unless the speaker lets us. So,
Exactly.
so that's your job.
Yeah, no, I will speak to Speaker Packard about it and see how soon that we can get started either on that interim study or at least looking at those statutes. So, yeah, we'll take care of that. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. And if I don't see you, have a nice summer. All right.
But we'll see everybody on the 3rd.
Yeah, absolutely. For our garbage tour, yeah. All right, thank you.